All right, so then we're pastoring in San Benito, and this is the next video that connects with that third video that I made about how I became a pastor, how I entered the pastoral role ministry in the church in San Benito. And I remember one Wednesday we were there at the church, and we had some members. We didn't have too many, but we had some people there. And I remember we were singing, and as we were singing, I wasn't the only one. I know that the brothers and the sisters, we could hear other voices. They were angelic voices. They were angelic voices that were singing with us the songs that we were doing for praise and worship. We were singing to the Lord, and the Spirit was beautiful. And all of a sudden, we began to hear other voices sing with us, and we could literally hear, the presence. We could feel the presence of God there. That's one of the things I'll never forget, that we heard angelic voices in the church one Wednesday when we were there having service. Um, so the church in San Benito, again, I had a minister. Later on, his daughter had she met somebody at a camp, and I guess she had met him some time ago, and he decided to visit, and he decided to come and congregate. He was a young man, and he had a desire to help, and he wanted to help, and he began to help us there in the church of San Benito. And we had a minister who was there helping us out, and his son was a drummer of the church. At that time, we didn't have musicians, and I began to invite a friend of mine who was a minister in a church in McAllen. His name is Juan Barron, which today he's a pastor of a church there in McAllen. And so he came, and he would help us out with the music. And Brother Caesar was a drummer, and he would help us with the drums, and we began to have service. And then later on, one of the sons of a family who was there, who knew how to play guitar, he had taught himself how to play. I invited him, why don't you bring it? And so he began to learn, and he began to play guitar with us as well that day. So that's how, the church began to grow in the area of the music. I remember going to retreats, again, referring back to the vision that we learned about that came from Casa de Dios. And we went to some retreats, and the Lord just transformed our lives. We had an encounter with God, me and my leaders, and it was one of those times also where things were challenging, especially with the leadership, because a lot of the mindset that they had was the mindset of a very old style traditional church that we had grown up with, or that I had grown up with also when I was a teenager, when I was an adolescent into a teenager, when I was in the church of Westlaco, which was something I was very familiar with. But again, we were young. At least we thought, we wanted to see something different, something new, and we began to implement visions. There was another vision from Saddleback with Pastor Rick Warren, and I began to merge the two visions together. I like both of them. They pretty much seem to be about the same. And now when I think about it, almost every vision connects to some degree to the same thing of what needs to be done. And so through that, as I mentioned to you, God began to bless us. We had some experiences where I remember 2 years in a row we had problems with bees. We had to shut down the church because we had bee problems, until finally we took care of it. I remember going out there when it would rain a lot, when it would rain heavy. We would cancel church because my wife and I, we were living here in Westlaco, and we would drive to San Benito. And so I remember going there in the rain and just waiting for people to come. If anybody who had not received our message would show up, and we would let them know that the church had been canceled. But for the most part, after the retreat, we had wonderful, amazing services. And then we began an academy, and people began to go to the academy. And we would go, and we would have classes on Thursdays, if I'm correct. On Thursdays we would have classes, and we had a group of people that were going through the classes, and we graduated them, and that's how the Lord began to move, because we were working for small groups, or to open the ministry of small groups. And one of the elderly lady that had been there, Sister Michaela, the one I had mentioned to you, God put it in her heart, because she had gone to the retreat. God had touched her, and she wanted to do something for God. She felt that, in all the years she had been serving, that she needed to do more than just serve in the kitchen, to be a help. She was a great help in that area, but she wanted to win souls for the Lord. And the Lord put it in her heart, and she asked me permission if she could use the dining room of the church. It was not too big, but it was bigger than her house, and so I told her go for it, and she went for it, and she gathered almost about 5 women in her group who later on gave their life to the Lord, and we saw them get baptized in the name of Jesus. And so this was amazing, because it was a time where, where God began to give growth, and but it was also a very challenging time. And I think that, some of the challenges later on came with the minister that was there. You know, we were there 4 years, and within somewhere around the 3rd year, or entering the 4th year, I know he wasn't happy. He wanted to start a church of his own, and I spoke with him. I remember said, why don't we work together to build this church up? And I told him, I wouldn't have a problem with having another church here in San Benito, but I think we should work together and combine our efforts to make this church grow. So he stayed, and we kept moving forward. But there were challenges along the way, some disagreements and what have you. And I remember that was also a time where I depended on one of my sister-in-laws a lot, which was my sister-in-law Mercy, and in a way I ordained her. I prayed over her to make her my assistant pastor. Nobody knew, though. Nobody knew she was that, but she became my assistant pastor. The other minister was my assistant pastor officially, as he was announced at the church, but she began to help me, and we were working together. And then finally we started to do we wanted more, and we began to do small groups here at my home, and we began to invite our friends. We were excited. It was a moment of excitement, because we wanted to start a church, and we wanted to come back to Weslaco. We had done some changes there at the church in San Benito. The lighting was better. We switched out what they had there, and we put I think it was about maybe 100-watt light bulbs, and it just lighted the place up so much. I remember that day that happened, and then we had somebody who came from. He wasn't from Mexico, but he was from a country, South America, and he came and he goes, Pastor, I don't have money, but I'm willing to give my tithe by my labor. And he goes, if you'll buy the materials, I'll redo the whole floor for the kitchen. And he did. He helped us out. He came and he leveled it all out, because there was a lot of cracks, it was broken, and he came and he just leveled it out real nice. He did a wonderful job there. God bless him. I don't know where he is, but he just helped us out in that area. The restrooms were finished, because they were a project that were started but not finished, and my brother-in-laws came and they helped me out, which was Joe and Mike, and they finished them up, and they looked awesome. As a matter of fact, when they got finished, the minister that was there, he goes, it looks like we're at the Marriott, and it's true, because they really look very nice with mirrors and what have you. So getting back again, we decided that we wanted to come back to Weslaco, and at the same time, we really didn't want to stay anymore with the organization. We had been faithful all those years, paying our duties and our offerings and our responsibilities financially to the National Assembly and to the district and to the sector, and we had fulfilled all of that. Even my personal ties, I was a teacher then, and being a pastor at the church. And I was also giving my tithes also to the district, as it was required by the organization again back then. And so I remember that I went to go talk to my bishop who had installed me there. I shared my heart with him, and he gave us his blessing. And he said, "I understand." He goes, "But just remember that wherever you go, what is important is that we win souls to the kingdom of God. And if you're winning souls with the small group that you have, go for it. Go forward. I understand what you're telling me." He goes, "In the end, it's about winning people for Jesus." And so that's how our journey began. We went from San Benito, and we came to Weslaco, and so a new journey begins. Um, and so again, the day we left San Benito, uh, in the church we had posted. They were just posters, but they were visions or declarations of the vision that we had for the church. And I remember that the Sunday we were gonna uh, turn in the church to the pastor who had returned back from Harlingen. Um, a lady had removed all the signs and what have you. And I don't know if it was because they were upset because we were leaving the church. The church had grown to about 67 people, and that's what we had in attendance on Sundays. So we began to measure the attendance. So from 12 people that began when I started in 2002, since all of them almost left to Harlingen with the other pastor, the church had grown to 67 members. We had been able to uh, get fruit from that old neighborhood that was there, with, of course, people that had moved in, and the stigma, the reputation of the church, which had a bad reputation before we came, had transformed. God had transformed it. And also at the same time, we had been able to reconcile with members who had stopped coming even before the other pastor had left, and some of them also started to come back to church. And so we thank God for that, again, because it was something that the Lord just made it happen. And it's a church. I remember a lot of memories, the baptisms that we did at the beach. Um, but I think that last day that we were there, it was interesting to see how the at least the leaders that were helping us out, some of them, um, I don't know, I guess they were disappointed, maybe they were hurt, and it ended on a different note. But I always pray for the church, and it's a church that one day that I would like to visit again, and just to show up, and visit, be part of the service. And maybe I'll do it with my daughter. Go back. She remembers the church. She remembers she was a child and going up the stairs to the Sunday school rooms that we had at that time. So again, just a wonderful people, and again, a time that the Lord just gave us. Um, there was a room that we dedicated also to one of the members, which was Sister Ball, Carlota Ball, a long-standing member. As a matter of fact, I believe I don't know if it was her husband or her father who had actually donated the plot of land for that church to be built there. So again, many years ago, church that had been there for almost about 50 years, before I had come there to be pastor of the church. So that's how the story ends. I wish I had known a lot of more things as a pastor. I think something that I needed a lot was I needed training. I needed a mentor. Many times I felt alone. I would seek out other pastors just to share my heart, talk to them. But they were pastors too. They had their concerns and what have you, but God knows. God knows. There was a pastor that I was able to connect with, and that was Pastor Oscar Leal, a good friend of mine, and miss him a lot. But we began to connect. He was an elderly pastor, and in a way, I could have been his son, one of his sons. But we connected somehow, and it was one of those times where we just grew together. and he blessed me by just, you know, being a friend to me, and I seemed to be a blessing to him because his family was happy to see him have new vigor, have new purpose for the church. Uh, I guess being a pastor of a small church himself, he had probably come to a point where he wasn't discouraged, but they just saw a new life in his as him and I began to hang out, and we just befriended each other. And again, he was an elderly gentleman, and I was a young pastor, and but we got along great. We took some trips out together to Arizona and to Dallas together to some of the conferences that were, we would have, and so I appreciate that time too. It was a time that, again, the friends that we were able to make along that time. So to my children, what I can tell you was that that's how we began. That's how I was called into the church as a pastor, and challenging times. A lot of times that made us cry, uh, especially with trying to get the music going, and just trying to be out there doing everything we needed to do. Um, I wish I would have taken more time to had understood the vision that was being introduced. We were excited, we were running with it, but there were still questions that I had and things that I didn't understand. But again, I was young. I was young then, and all right. So I'm gonna end it here, and we'll get into the next one when we start the church here in Wesco. I love you. God bless you. This is Apostle John Jaramillo, and to my children, I love you so much, and I hope that these videos here will be a blessing to your life as how we began.